And COVID accelerated things on the back burner for those contemplating future enhancements to their student learning practices. And as the learning experience widens, the tidal wave of information that students are being exposed to needs to be harnessed and targeted so that students receive specific, relevant subject content and are not overwhelmed by resources and materials that come from outside and are sometimes spurious or even off-putting. We're all part of the learning curve of this transition, either as teachers, curriculum developers, or students, and perspectives are changing. Lessons had to be learned quickly once COVID restrictions arrived. Now, status quo bias is always sitting there for all of us to grapple with. The phenomenon of preferring one's usual environment and current state of affairs to remain the same. And when decisions are made, people who follow the status quo prefer the more familiar choice over the less familiar one, and even if the less familiar one is perhaps more beneficial. So challenging the status quo can allow consideration of new ideas, new innovations, and promote creativity. And during COVID, the status quo was swamped. So what many of us were thinking of doing in the future became what we were forced to do in the present, and sharp learning curves implemented change. And I'm going to discuss with you maths and stats support, particularly what we do at La Trobe, and how that changed due to COVID, and what lessons we learned. This is subject support. So what I'm talking about is subject support in our large support environment and how that impacted us. Our support is individual help for maths and stats in general, and for subjects and disciplines that utilise maths or stats within them. And we consider questions or concerns from students from their lecture materials or their tutor practice classes, computer labs, assignments, exam preparations. And we also look at basic skills improvement and showing students the relevance of maths to their disciplines, and confidence building, and consider maths anxiety issues as well. To do that, we need a group of fantastic tutors with the relevant skills. So that's the first very important thing. Another thing which is important for us is to be open with that help as much as we can, with as many tutors available as we can, 9 to 5. Sometimes we do some sessions, and we do lesser sessions over breaks, mid-semester breaks. So we're really open all the time, but the main through semesters, we do 9 to 5. No appointment necessary. And we also provide maths hub modules with self-paced, self-assessed programs for students to do, with help sessions and with worksheets, quizzes, videos, all on the LMS site for all students to be able to come to and look at, whether they're doing a module or not. And another important thing for us is the friendly environment. So what were the consequences of going fully online? For campus outreach, for the engagement of the students, for the mathematical communication, we all had this problem. What were the disadvantages of going online? What were we going to do? Was face-to-face better than Zoom, or what was happening, and what can we do to make the Zoom sessions as good as the face-to-face sessions? Because we've been having terrific feedback. Everything was going well. We had a beautiful big maths hub. Students were coming in and sitting around talking. They loved it. Wonderful feedback. So what happened and what did we do about it? Well, the first thing that was interesting was, of course, with the change to Zoom, we actually had advantages with campus outreach because students could join Zoom and on Zoom sessions from any campus and from anywhere, of course. And tutors from the different campuses who were just only looking at students at their own campus could now support all students from all campuses concurrently. So that was lovely for the tutors and lovely for the students. And a wider range of students from more campuses were able to access the support as well. And the tutors and the students from the different geographical locations were able to discuss mathematics concerns, skills improvement ideas together, which was also interesting and nice. And before COVID, and when we have just face-to-face, we had the problem of setting up sessions from the different campuses. Students may or may not have been able to get to those sessions. When you have a set session, a set time, it never suits everybody. And so you set up a session at another time, and that's a bit of a problem. And we also had problems getting the tutors that were available. We had very good, no problem with Bendigo, but with the other campuses, we had a little bit more to do with getting those things working well. And often we didn't get that many students coming along. So now with the Zoom, and when we had COVID, we then had students being able to pop in to any of the sessions, drop in anytime from any campus. So that was a big advantage for them because they could actually start learning their problem or get their problem answered immediately, reinforced immediately. They can counter the problem instead of waiting for another set session. So from going from, say, Tuesdays at 2 and Thursdays at 2, they had any day as well. So that did help. In what sense? Well, here we go. I've got some data there of our campus outreach 2019 in comparison to our campus outreach in 2020. As you can see, we did get a lot more students coming in from the different campuses and engaging in the modules, which was online modules, which was really interesting. And we did in 2019, we had a math skills program where the students had to email me to get a code to access the quizzes. Whereas in 2020, I rewrote the quizzes, I wrote new quizzes in the LMS site so that they didn't have to have a code, and they got all those quizzes for the modules within the LMS site. So I knew we were going to get more students engaging for that reason. But also the fact that everything was via Zoom, I think that we got more people looking at the site and getting help from the modules. So that improved immensely, hugely. And also to look at semester 1, 221 against semester 222, semester 1, 222, yep, which was last year against this year, you can see that we continued to get that engagement from the other campuses, and that's been working very well. In fact, the engagement is very similar for the modules. Maths Hub visits have this year gone up about 12.5% on last year, but we're still there. So we're still getting a lot of students Zooming in to get their help this way. Now, this slide shows the number of subjects whose students visited the Maths Hub. So in particular semesters over the last, since 2019, before COVID and up to now. And except I haven't got semester 1, 222 data yet because they've only just done their exams. And it shows the percentage of those subjects that showed an equal or higher pass rate for the group of students who visited the Maths Hub from the group of students who did not. And it also shows the Maths Hub modules, the same thing for the Maths Hub modules. So you can see that in semester 1, 2019, we had 31 subjects, and then in 220, 34, and in 221, 39. So our subject engagement is increasing. And the subjects with equal or higher pass rates for Maths Hub visitors went from 84% in semester 1, 220 to 85% semester 1, 221 to 95% in semester 1, 221. So that's increased too. And subject engagement in Maths Hub modules also increased. And like in semester 1, 219, we had 17. And then in semester 1, 220, 29, semester 1, 221, 34. And with the equal or higher pass rates going from 82% right up to 91%. And Similarly, for math submodules, that's increased a lot too, from 9 in 2019 to 21 in 2020 and 30 in 2021. That's semester 2. And subjects with equal or higher pass rates for the math submodules engaged students was 56% up to 95% and now up to 97%. So can delivery of support via Zoom enhance and enliven mathematical communication? Well, what we had to do, and we all had to do when we went on to our Zoom sessions, was try to replace the whiteboard, you know, or the blackboard that we have normal face-to-face with the whiteboard and annotate functions in Zoom. And it actually worked quite well with support because you had direct communication between the tutor and the student with Zoom. Although you do have direct communication face-to-face as well, with Zoom you had other things you could do with the students. They could get onto their lecture notes and show you, or quizzes or reviews of their quizzes or something like that. They can, with a click of a button, and it's quite easier than sitting in a room. Sometimes they only just have a bit of paper. So that the interaction that you could do online was really quite good and helped the student to explain their problems. And support via Zoom encouraged relevant individual discussion. It of course replaced the larger group discussions in a room, and a larger group discussion is fine, and it's, you know, for lectures and practice classes, but it doesn't always eke out individual problems. So some students are shy and tend to sit there and listen and try to look involved, but they can't do the problems and they need individual targeted support. And that sometimes can't be done in the lecture situation of the practice class, but it can be done with support because you can get confidential discussions regarding an individual's concerned, and you can easily detect their problems a bit better. The tutor can target the skills problems and delve into a student's reasons for needing support. And that can be done easily via Zoom because you will often talk to them one-to-one. They're not really in a group situation, although they are in a group situation in a way, because they're in a group of Zoom, but you can actually talk to them quite well rather than in a big room. So the chat gives students the chance to add extra questions or communicate concerns, and this definitely improved the waving at the tutor. You know, I'm here, don't forget me. You can say it in the chat on Zoom and they can get more attention quicker. So, and attendance collection was easier in Zoom a bit because in the face-to-face situation, we had bits of paper where students had to fill their names out and their time in, and then when they walked out, they had to do their time out. And that was always awkward. You get students coming in forgetting to write on it and you have to tell them to, and vice versa. When they were going out, they'd forget to put their time out and that sort of thing. Whereas in Zoom, you easily get their time in and time out through your records, and they can put their details in the chat. They can even tell you what problems they have. They can continue to chat when you're busy with another student. And if you've got to keep your eye on the chat, you're able to answer their problems and get them onto some problem to work on while you're working with other students. So it really improved a bit that asking more questions and accessibility to the lecture notes and resources, and the sharing of work problems was also quite easy to do because they could show you on Zoom by scanning their questions or write on the annotate function. They could write on a whiteboard, explain their problems, and they could also be showing you the place where they have the problem, like the worksheet or the assignment or whatever. And also, as I said, sharing quiz attempts and results sometimes was very helpful too via Zoom. So we were getting a similar help to the students using the Zoom functions, and that was interesting. So in fact, there was advantages with Zoom, which we didn't realise were going to happen, but it does. We were aware that we needed to engage the students because, you know, they're not sitting in a room, they're not talking to one another. So then you needed a lot of engagement. But support is a way where you can do that. So we did actually ask the students in our surveys, you know, what do you prefer when the delivery, as we've gone along and over the years, 220, 221 in this semester, we've seen basically a lot of students are wanting Zoom or a combination of Zoom and face-to-face. They're very happy with Zoom and getting online help. There's smaller percentages that would like just face-to-face in a room. And, you know, in this semester 1-2-22, 85% of the responding students to our survey said we'd like Zoom or a combination of Zoom and face-to-face. And only 15% said they'd only like face-to-face. So some of the feedback was interesting. They'd say things like, what do I prefer? Well, online mainly, I think, is the best option, as it's easier for the Maths Hub staff and also the students to get in contact with. Also, some face-to-face sessions would be helpful. Having online sessions is very helpful. Perhaps having some options for on-site Maths Hub could be good. Existing support is good. Face-to-face could be added. I love the online Maths Hub sessions, and I hope they continue even after face-to-face open up. And then other students will say, online is perfect. It's the perfect way to deliver the help. I only use online, and I think online is essential. So it was interesting to hear that. But of course, this is a support session where they're able to pop in and pop out whenever they like. So I think that's probably the main thing why they like the online. But of course, face-to-face is always a lovely option if we can do it as well. So how did we fill in the gaps between face-to-face and Zoom? Well, as you can see, that's the picture of the Maths Hub pre-COVID with me sitting there, one tutor, and sometimes I had another tutor in that session, and we would go around to each of the students. And as you can see, there they all are happily working on their problems. What happened in Zoom, of course, was that they were all on a Zoom session and they were all there looking at you, and you could immediately know what their problems were. Whereas when you're in a big room, you had to go around to each student. What's your problem? What's your problem? And sometimes you'd be repeating the same problem with the same student because you'd get over to another student, they'd be working on the same assignment or the same problem from the lecture notes, and you'd have to repeat it. And so standing in the room and saying, who's got this question, really doesn't work. Whereas in Zoom, you can find out straight away. You ask the students to put in the chat what their problems are, you can read down, and you can see exactly who the couple of students are doing on one thing, and you can say to them, well, we'll work on that together. And then they start talking to each other, and they're sort of grouping together in little groups, which is really interesting. And with the Zoom, it really is still a friendly environment. In fact, if you look at that one where we're sitting in the room, it might even be a more friendly environment because they're actually looking at one another and talking to one another in the chat and talking to you. And so there's a type of better interaction and communication. Oops. And in the chat, the tutor can decipher each student's needs and work together as a group, or provide individual support, and students can go to other sessions if a session is busy without disappointment. That's another thing. When you're in a big room and the tutor doesn't get round to you, that's okay. You wait for the next tutor, but if you have to go off to a class, you've got to go off to the class and then come back another time, and that's okay. That worked quite well. But in the Zoom sessions, we often have a couple of tutors on at once. So if one tutor is busy and they're working on one particular thing, then the student can go off to another Zoom session and try another tutor who may not be as busy. So when we look at the difference between face-to-face in a room and face-to-face Zoom, of course, we have arguments for things being better face-to-face or better via Zoom. And we can look at those one by one. There's, one argument for face-to-face in a room, there's less distraction and you're not at home. Face-to-face in a room definitely improves in concentration. Well, that is true for some, but it may not be true for everybody. Face-to-face via Zoom can be enlightening if it's tailored to needs, as long as you're communicating with the students. Discussion with teachers and other students enhances understanding. Yes, it does, but that also can be done online. So, but you have to have the support that's engaging, and you have to have people that are friendly that'll talk to you about that, what your problems are. A better chance of passing by engaging in a room, yes, possible. But you can get good study techniques online with online learning, and maths sub-student results showed the positive trends with their passing, the students that are passing in the subjects actually was increasing. So that was interesting. It's more comfortable, you learn better face-to-face in a room. Yes, that's true, but also you can be comfortable if you have easy access to tutors, materials and resources if you're learning online, but you have to have that set up well. And disadvantaged students or those falling behind can actually get embarrassed in a room situation. So support via Zoom can be a more comfortable way for them to express their concerns and find solutions with a one-to-one tutor. And it's a little bit less embarrassing for them. And there's opportunity to network with other students in problem solving face-to-face, yes, but there's also that possibility in group discussions that have, and as you'd heard today, have been successfully done online. And it is equitable because it reaches out to more students on Zoom. Students can still network and they can join in support sessions together, and they can even sit together and go to places together and access the support. So that was just something I wanted to pop in. And the other thing with online learning, of course, students need diligence. They need self-regulation. They need a desire to get things done. They need dedication to keep going. They need motivation. They need attention. They need self-assessment. They need self-efficacy. All of those things. They really need to be able to do well in online learning. And that's what they've had to do throughout the COVID, where we've had lots of lockdowns. So they have to do all that with distance from the lecturer, with distance from the fellow students, and they're not in that old face-to-face in a room roundtable discussion where they can just talk to one another in little groups. But if you do quality support well, you can fill in those gaps, and you can try to encourage and guide students to do this type of learning online, but they do have to have all of those things working for them. So there's some feedback from semester 1 to 22, which is right now. The students are we always have good feedback, but students are still giving us that wonderful feedback, and that's great, and it's always good to hear. And I appreciate the students going to the trouble of, giving us that feedback in the surveys. So what have we learned? What are the lessons we learned through the pandemic? Well, we learned that students seek support, they appreciate it and are encouraged by it, whether it's support face-to-face in a room or support via Zoom. They're still giving us great feedback from face-to-face, now in Zoom. It's still excellent feedback. And I think it's because they like support. They know they're being supported. They talk to us, and I think that's very important. And many students do prefer the convenience of online support 9 to 5, drop in from anywhere, because they can straight away get their problem answered and get on to the next thing, instead of having to wait for a session on Thursday afternoon, say. They can drop in on Monday morning when they've got the problem, when they're working on it. And we can outreach much better now to the different campuses. So that's something that really was something we were worried about. We're now getting a lot better outreach to those campuses. And the tutors also from the different campuses can engage with all the students with Zoom delivery. So the tutors get a better experience as well. So the students are getting good experience, but the tutors are getting a better experience by being able to talk to students from different campuses. Subject participation is increasing, which would have probably increased anyway. But it's good it's increasing, even though we've had these real problems. And with participating subjects, there continues to be the high number of subjects with equal or higher pass rates for the group of students in their subject who visit the Maths Hub or do the Maths Hub modules than those who don't. And we can now support students in a variety of ways. Because of these initiatives we had to implement during COVID, we now have, all of us have better ways of supporting students. So that was all I wanted to say. Thank you for listening.